Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fully Charged Plus podcast series. Great guest today, who you already know if you watch Fully Charged, Elliot Richards. A wonderful Elliot, lives in China, has done for now getting on for 10 years, and has just you're going to love this episode. It's such a brilliant, different view of China to the one that we're often fed in this country. And that's not to say that there aren't things that we can be, justifiably critical of in Chinese, the Chinese government and what's going on in China. But there's an enormous amount of things happening there that we just don't hear about, generally speaking. And I just think Elliot gives us an amazing window to a world that we are very unfamiliar with in this country, and particularly in this episode, the history of how we got to where we are now, I think is critically important. So this is a really fascinating discussion. It was a real privilege having Elliot on the team, and he's such a brilliant communicator and such a lovely, gentle spirit. I think I'm very, very happy to have him anything to do with Fully Charged. It's a great privilege for us. So you're going to love this. It's 55 minutes of exquisite, top quality podcast content. Before that, though, just a quick reminder about our two live shows, the one in Amsterdam in March and the live show at Farnborough in the UK in April, end of April, beginning of May, are storming ahead in terms of the organisation, what's going on. Really, really exciting stuff. Some amazing things going to be on display there, much bigger than last year in the UK. Obviously, it's the first one we've done in Europe. So that's very exciting. We're looking forward to that. But the Dutch team that are doing that are very, very gung-ho. They're very positive about what's going on there. So a lot of interest for both those shows. Obviously, much later next year in September, we will be in San Diego for Fully Charged USA. That's very exciting. And then later still in March of 2023, alongside the other three shows, we'll also be doing our first show in Australia, Fully Charged live in Sydney, which is amazing. So we're really looking forward to all those. Just thought I'd mention those, just so that you're aware of those things. But before we do any more, let's have a quick word from our lovely sponsors, My Energy, because they are, one, an amazing company that are doing incredible things, and two, they're incredibly supportive of this podcast. It's entirely down to them, specifically for this podcast, that we can still do this podcast and get the amazing people on it that we do. So let's hear from My Energy. My Energy is putting the I back into British innovation. My Energy is putting the I back into inventing the future. My Energy is putting the I back into inspiring a nation. Recharging the world with green, smart energy. Charge your EV with your PV and more. Visit myenergy.com and help to spark the green revolution. My Energy, driving the charge to a greener future. Okay, well, that's so good to have that. I want to thank My Energy. They're an amazing company. They're doing incredible things. They're growing fast. They're a UK-based manufacturing entity, a startup that is actually keeping going, which is fantastic. It's so good to hear how well they're doing. That's it, though. Let's get in to the podcast. So please welcome onto the Fully Charged Plus podcast, Elliot Richards, over there in China. So Elliot, thank you. So it's really good to talk to you, and we should do this more often. It's just you know what it's like. Life takes over. Of course, stuff happens.
I'd love to be happy to be back. So
no, it's really good. It's really good to have you back. And I mean, what's happened this year is, for a start, I keep opening an email and go, oh my God, Elliot's made another incredible video. I can't keep up with it. So you've actually, have you kept a track of how many episodes you've done? So I know there's a couple we haven't put out yet. Still.
Yeah. No, I haven't kept, I don't know how many. I think it might be about 10, this year. And we've covered everything from right at the start of the year. We did the buses in Shenzhen and
In
taxis,
Shenzhen, yeah.
and then a lot of car reviews, and we got a few more coming up towards the end of the year, which covers buses and taxis again. So that's quite exciting.
Right.
So,
It is
there's
extraordinary.
just so much, I think we were
Yeah, I
hoping...
mean, what's obvious, you could do an episode a day,
Easily.
if you had the time and the budget.
Easily. There is
Yeah.
literally like people contacting and saying, "Oh, we've got this new product coming out, or we've got this new car company we've just
Wow.
announced."
Yes, we've just launched.
Yeah. It's very hard to keep up, but it's good. There's so much kind of forward momentum here that
Right.
the whole industry is changing so quickly. I just it just blows my mind even now. When I see like the motor show, I went to the Guangzhou Motor Show the other day. It's like,
Right.
well, don't know that brand. There's
You're kidding. Wow.
almost exclusively electric cars. I think there's maybe 5% ICE cars there. It just showed
Right.
you,
Wow.
the change that's going on here. And
Because, 10 years ago, that would have been exactly the other way around. I'd have been all excited about the 5% that were electric.
yeah. No, there's too much.
Yeah. That is amazing, isn't it?
Overwhelming. Yeah, but lots and lots of stuff this year. I think next year is going to be a big year as well, in terms of energy and renewables and
Right.
those sorts of things. Like the cars have obviously dominated quite a lot this year, and
Yeah.
they've started exporting to Europe now. So both
Yes.
BYD, NIO, XPeng, all in Europe now. Even more will go next year. So that Aura, that's coming very soon.
Well, MG is the one that are common. I've seen dozens here. It's not like, oh look, that's an MG. I don't even do that anymore. I go, huh. It's just a car going the other way, but it is an MG. That's and an electric one. I mean, those have been so popular here.
I
really
think,
done well.
Yeah, and I think the transition you've probably noticed in the UK this year has been pretty significant, right?
Yeah. Oh, very big. I mean, that's a whole other. There's a whole other podcast we have to do about the charging infrastructure here. It has not kept up with the increase in numbers of cars. It's very, very noticeable. That there are people queuing to use chargers at certain times, which I've never seen in the last 11 years. It just doesn't have a and that's and my wife occasionally comes back fuming because she's driven an electric car for a long time. She knows how chargers work, and she goes to a charger and there's a guy there that has never used one, has bought a brand new car. No one told him how to use a charger, so she has to tell him. She is Australian and quite rude, so she doesn't show him in a nice, gentle, polite, middle class English lady way. She's effing and jeffing. It's a CCS. Don't try and use a Chatamo, you doofus. I dread to be one of those men. It'd be terrifying. No, I'm portraying my wife in a very negative way. She's lovely.
Luckily, we don't have that issue so much here. Though I know that during national holiday, so when a lot of the country goes traveling around China, everyone travels on October the 1st, basically. So half the country goes, and because they've...
And when you say half the country in China, that is a lot of people.
Yeah, it's about 600 million people flooding onto the trains and the buses, and and obviously Tesla's had quite a good year in China. They've sold tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands, I think, this year, especially in Shanghai.
Oh, they have. Yes, it's hundreds of thousands, definitely. Yeah.
And there was a lot of complaining on October the 1st that people had to queue up for 3 or 4 hours to use the chargers because
the superchargers. Wow.
Everyone has bought a Tesla, but the actual supercharger network hasn't quite kept up with these kind of big events that happen in China. So, it's still not perfect here, but it's probably a lot better than the UK at the moment. I don't think I've ever had to find a charger. It's been pretty easy for me.
And have you ever gone to a rapid charger in particular and it hasn't worked?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah,
because that's my big bugbear. There's plenty of them around, but they don't work.
It's never the payment. Like the payment thing is always quite easy because you just use your phone and you scan a QR code and pay. It's
right, and the network that supports that is fairly stable and
very stable. We've 4G everywhere or 5G, and the whole everything's very, very stable. And that from that point of view,
right.
The issue is that I don't know. Just sometimes I plug it in, it just doesn't work. Maybe you hear the fans spinning up, and you think, "Oh, this is it. All right, here we go," and it just spins down. You're like, "Oh, it's not going to work, is it? So so you just park on the next one, basically, because there's always at least 10 charges in one spot. So, I mean,
so what British people are listening to this who've used electric cars, well, their spirits will have risen that it's not just us that are rubbish. Through that whole story, until you said you just moved to the next one, because with us, there's one around the back of the car park that was installed by the council in 2015 and hasn't worked since 2016. Yeah, and there aren't 10 more. There's none more. That's it.
I think we're quite lucky in that respect, because I looked at my my app on in the car, and it said, the next one's 300 meters away. The one next to that is 1 kilometer away, and the one next to that is 1.3 kilometers away. And I got down to about 5 kilometers of range. I was like, oh, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. It's absolutely no problem at all. So we are very lucky. And I did get
networking. That networking works in your car, in your
all of them. All of them work. They've got BP ones. They've got China State Grid,
and that's actually on the sat nav in the car. That's what's telling you where they are. Right.
They're all programmed into the car sat nav, so you can just press it and drive to it. It's very, very good. So we're quite lucky. I'm quite lucky.
Yes. But okay, so here's one of the things. So we quite often get. I get that. There's sort of negative feedback after one of your shows about that. It's all well and good what you're saying, but what about the power? They're just burning coal and blah, blah. The whole coal burning thing, particularly from Australians, because Australians know that they're digging up massive holes in their own country and selling it to China on huge ships that they cut a channel through the Great Barrier Reef. I mean, when people talk about lithium mining, I just have to clench my buttocks because what we're doing with fossil fuels is a trillion times worse, not a bit worse. Anyway, I'll let that one destroy some more of our natural habitat. But then, so that story is a very easy one to do in a tweet or in a little soundbite.
Yeah.
China building I don't know how many. It is a terrifying amount of coal burning power plants that are still being built. But there is the flip side of that is that they're investing in colossal amounts in renewables. I mean, it is on a scale that we can't imagine in the rest of the world.
That's right. We'll start with the coal because it's good news and bad news. Obviously, it's bad news because it's coal, so that's never good news.
Yeah.
And I was doing a bit of research, and at the moment, there's 43 new coal plants planned in China.
Oh, 43. I thought it was like 800 or something.
No, but those 43 are bad news because of the amount of horrific stuff they billow out. So, I mean, overall, China kind of has 1,000 gigawatts of power annually from coal. That's half of the global total. So,
wow, isn't that, mate? Wait a minute. I just want to get that in my brain because my brain's quite old and partly broken. China produces half of all the coal burning power plant electricity in the world.
Correct.
In one country.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Just to make sure I really understood that. Bloody hell. That's quite chunky.
It's pretty chunky and it's not great. And, they're planning 43 new plants. And we all know that kind of China's got a couple of targets. So they've got carbon neutrality by 2060.
Right.
And they've got peak emissions by 2030. So they're saying that within the next few years, we're going to hit peak emissions. And obviously, they're going to do that with 43 new coal plants. But they said they're going to start winding down the coal intensity after 2026. And it's kind of fitting because coal plants last around 35 years, which is 2060 exactly. So I think if they even are able to open these 43 new plants, because I don't think they're going to open all of them, they're going to start winding that down after 2026. And I think it's going to be a pretty rapid wind down. I think, tolerance of this is dwindling here. I think they have, part of the good news is they've stopped investing in overseas coal plants or stopped building overseas coal plants.
Yes, I did read a story about that.
So that's good news. I think 44 plants have been potentially cancelled, which is really good. There's going to be no more funding for overseas coal. Those 44 plants were worth about $50 billion US. It's big numbers here.
God.
And that will save around about 200 million tons of CO2 per year.
Right.
And so given that they have 35-year lifespans, that's about 7 billion tons of CO2 not going into the atmosphere. Well, that's overseas. In China, that might still happen. But I think you've seen the surge of EVs, renewables in China. I think that people just won't tolerate that anymore. And the issue is that for us in China, we actually see the results of coal plants, stirring into life over the winter because we see the pollution. Last weekend the air quality wasn't great. It was around 150 AQI, which is the 2.5 AQI, which is the really small particles which get into your lungs and do damage. London on a bad day is about 50. We were about.
And what was it there? Sorry, say it again.
150, 160. Just a couple of days ago. So I have to say it's much, much, much better than 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, because I remember when we used to regularly see photographs. Well, my brother-in-law lived in Shanghai for a while, and he used to take pictures out of his apartment window because he could see his office where he worked, which was about a mile away, on a clear day. On a not clear day, you couldn't see anything. I mean, it was just he'd send us a picture of a grey, like the grey screen that's behind me here. That was it. There was nothing. You couldn't see anything. It's extraordinary. And but that was maybe even more than 5. That maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, luckily those really bad days don't really happen. But some buildings do get obscured, which are, like you say, a mile away. You can't see them anymore.
Yeah.
And I think, I think that the future, I just don't think people are going to tolerate it because, people's quality of life, Chinese people here are much more interested in having like a healthy lifestyle, good environment, good air.
Yeah.
I mean, Shanghai government is on a massive plan to build a lot of new parks in Shanghai. I can't remember the number.
Right.
But they're even digging up the gap in between middle of the road and making small like pocket parks. So people are much more conscious of what their environment is like. So I really don't think they're actually going to be able to build 43 new plants over the next few years. And
I mean, that's what. So I was going to say, one of the great things about the videos you're making is that we'll often, as casual observers who've not been to China, I look in the background of a building you're driving past, and there's loads of trees and gardens and planting and greenery.
Yeah.
It's not concrete and dust.
No,
which is probably in some ways what I'd imagined. It's either concrete or dust, and there's nothing growing. Very green, verdant areas. I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's pretty universal. Everywhere you go, there seems to be a lot of trees, basically, in cities.
And it really is because, most of us live in skyscrapers here or, very tall apartment buildings. We don't have gardens, and the government, wants to make a concerted effort to improve people's quality of life. I mean, in the river in Shanghai, next to the Bund and, where the towering kind of skyscrapers are, they've created a 90 or over 100 kilometer greenway. So they've got rid of all these kind of dead spaces right next to the river. They've got cycle lanes, they've got running tracks, and it's packed at the weekend and it's beautiful. Lots of new trees, and so they are making a lot of effort. So that's why I just don't think this is probably going to happen. I think the issue is that because exports are booming right now because of the demand from the West in terms of buying stuff.
Well, this is the other very important point about why they're burning so much coal in China.
Yeah,
there is a reason.
Yeah, exactly. And so, they need the energy, they need the power. Renewables can't quite make that at the moment. So coal is for them is the next best solution. So we're essentially burning coal to feed the kind of consumerism, in the West, because a lot of that is going straight towards exports. So we feel the effects of that with local pollution, but maybe back home you don't feel the effects of these coal plants. So, I mean, I'm sure China doesn't actually want to build these coal plants, but they have to improve their GDP and give people jobs and stuff. So I think it's not only about stop burning stuff, but it's about stop buying stuff as well.
Yes.
Stop buying crap you don't need.
Well, that is, I mean, because that's it's a difficult one in the sense that we're, I've been accused of promoting Chinese cars. And I go, well, if we do that, then we're promoting European ones and American ones and Korean ones and Japanese ones as well. I don't know if that's what we're doing, is promoting. I think we're illustrating, or hopefully, just showing that they exist. But in a sense, if one person didn't buy a pack of 10 T-shirts that they wear twice and throw away, but instead bought an electric car that they used for 15 years, and then the battery was used in another way, and then the car was used, that,
exactly.
That there's a kind of, I'm going to make that argument. It may not stand up to a lot of investigation, but I think it holds some water, because it's that stuff that I think people aren't aware of, is how much of the most mundane day-to-day products we use and rely on and don't think about are made in China. I mean, I'm not aware of it, but the T-shirt I'm wearing now is made in China.
Yeah.
I didn't buy it because it was made in China, but I also didn't not buy it because it was made in China. I bought it because it was actually a really nice T-shirt.
Yeah,
it's ever so comfy.
Yeah, and it is everything. So the microphone you're using, I'm using, the earphones you're using, the microphone stand that you're using,
the laptop I'm using, it's made in China. Yeah,
that stuff has to be made somewhere, and we have to take the brunt of it. Whilst they are trying to invest a lot more in renewables. I mean, there's, I think 50% of the world's renewables are now manufactured and installed in China, and I think there's something like 280 gigawatts of onshore wind power, 1.13 gigawatts of offshore wind power, just in the first half of 2020.
Just that in itself, the fact that there is 280 gigawatts of onshore wind in China.
Yeah.
I don't know what we've got here, maybe 1 or 2.
Yeah.
We've got quite a lot of wind turbines. No, it might be a bit more than that. I mean, we've got a high number of offshore, we've got a lot of offshore wind. I don't actually have the figures, but 280 gigawatts is more than the whole of Europe would have in wind power.
Yeah, completely.
And we've been installing wind power for 30 years. It is an extraordinary it's the rapid deployment is what's always breathtaking with China.
Yeah, and
how quickly that's been done.
Yeah, and most of it's manufactured here as well. So they can just manufacture it, take it to site, and it's a lot quicker. And there's a lot of obviously government incentives and investment in this, because they will probably exceed that target of carbon neutrality by 2060. They'll probably do that maybe 10 years beforehand. They usually exceed their targets. So there is some hope, although I think the next few years is a bit coaly,
a bit roughy. Yeah. I think the thing particularly with coal, I think there's huge discrete debates, lobbying pressure, con jobs, lies, bribery, bullying, murder being done by the oil and gas industry. But you sort of feel the coal industry kind of go, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Even the people that are digging it up, even the mad Australians that wave it about in Parliament, they know it's kind of not, you can't really argue for coal. You can argue also, and we all accept. I had a whole lot of reactionary tweets the other day about how the culture and the world we live in is built on fossil fuels, which of course it is.
Yeah.
Who doesn't? If you don't know that, then you really need to go and read something. But it is. But that doesn't mean we should continue to use them. But I mean, in terms of coal, it just feels like the argument's over. Even that the Chinese government know, we've got to build these because we've got to make another quintillion T-shirts for people in the West to buy and wear once. Yeah. So we need power to do that. But they know it's game over, man, for coal. I mean, it isn't the answer.
It's a stopgap for now whilst they get their renewables into place. I think it's unstoppable now. And just one more stat around the renewables was that just in the first half of 2021, China's renewable energy generation was 1.06 trillion kilowatt hours. That's a number with so many zeros I can't even comprehend it.
No, That is bonkers. So that's multiple terawatt hours, isn't it? I mean, I don't even know what it would be.
I don't know. It's beyond me, but yeah, it's
it's hundreds of thousands of terawatt hours. I mean, it is that thing because I wish I had my annual production of solar power on my house.
Yeah,
to compare it with, because it's a lot. It's like 3 megawatts. It's not like nothing, but
no.
geez, yeah, it's
trillions and billions.
Maybe 3,000 kilowatt hours I do in a year, something like that, which is nothing. Yeah, and that's going to be. That's solar and wind, really, isn't it? There's not. I mean, there isn't. Yes, it's just that. But I've seen that amazing photographs of, solar farms in China with wind turbines interspersed with them.
Yeah,
that are taken from an aeroplane, and you can't see the other end of the solar farm. It's so big, it just
spreads across the whole
ocean. An ocean of panels.
And there's not just one or two of those, but there's probably tens of them. Across the deserts, all around China and up and down mountains, and you do see a lot more of.
So if you're driving around, you would see that.
Like if you go south from Shanghai, there's a lot of wind turbines, and in the sea just off Shanghai, if you come in on a flight that way, then you definitely see a lot of wind turbines out in the sea there.
Oh, right. So they do. Oh, they have got offshore there, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So they're taking it pretty seriously. Just needs a few years to catch up.
But it is such a remarkable story. The fact that in this country our electricity consumption has reduced, which you would think is anything but. I mean, I don't think it will continue to reduce, but it has reduced, and that is from talking to engineers in that field, the National Grid. It's LEDs, light bulbs have made this massive difference.
That's huge, isn't it?
And I mean, I can see it just because I now have the modern technology that shows me how much energy I'm using. We didn't have that in the old days. You could watch your meter wheels spinning round faster or slower. That was as accurate as it got. But we can see if I have all the lights, every light on in our house, I can barely register the power being used. It's minuscule. It's tiny. It's not much more than if you plug a phone in, you'd see it go up.
Is it that accurate?
Oh, well, not quite, but I mean, it is. I can tell if I just have every light on in the house and nothing else going, so no water heating, washing machines, anything like that, but every single light we've got, and they're all LEDs, and then I put the toaster on, you see a spike.
Wow.
So it is a tiny amount. And when do you ever have with my wife living with an Australian, quite often, quite a lot of lights are on that I don't think are necessary because they're in rooms that no one's in.
No.
So I still have that habit of turning bloody lights off. But actually, I have to accept now it really barely makes a difference. It's just such minimal energy use.
No,
and you don't have to replace the damn bulb. But that said, one of the reasons that our power consumption hasn't gone off the scale is we don't make anything anymore. Our manufacturing, capacity, which when you were born and certainly when I was born, was huge. I mean, we were a big manufacturing nation. We had factories that employed tens of thousands of people and made stuff.
Yep.
And we barely do. I mean, it still does happen, and I love going around a factory, but it's to a tiny degree of what it was. And it's all gone. Either, it's not all gone to China. Huge amount of it has. Malaysia, China, South Korea. Yeah. Now, that's where the stuff we have now is made.
That's right.
And that's happened over, I guess, the last, it's like the last 40 years that's happened.
That's right.
Really a big shift. And it's from America as well. I mean, it's not just from Europe. But I mean, that's it. There was one thing I wondered whether you were, if that's been discussed there, that there is definitely a move now to start making some stuff like in North America back here. So manufacturing. So, but in particular, it's been batteries. That seems to be the big drive. So we're starting to build a British Volt, a huge factory up in Northumberland. There's, what's it called? Northvolt in Sweden. Huge factory. And we've interviewed the people that are running that. It's extraordinary. And that's employing thousands of people. So that is happening, and it makes sense because it is daft in a way.
Yeah.
There's I wish I had it in front of me. A wonderful. It's just the story of a gram of nickel. So where it's dug up, where it's shipped, where it's refined. It's each one of those processes where it's turned into battery materials, where it's made into a battery, where it's put in a battery pack, where it's put into a car. Each of those steps is in a different country around the world, and you go, which is globalization, which has got huge benefits, huge downsides. But you think, is that really sensible? And it's on a scale that becomes economic because it's so huge. I think all those things have taken a battering, haven't they? Really, in the last couple of years with, the chip shortage, which is a very popular problem here at the moment. Oh yeah, we ain't got no. Yeah, you can't have a sandwich, so there's a chip shortage. Everything is affected by chip shortage. It doesn't matter what it is.
And it's biting here as well. There's chip shortages here, and manufacturers are starting to get. I mean, some companies like I think BYD are okay, but some others are beginning to feel the pressure as well. It's having a much wider impact right now. So.
Well, we heard a great story the other day, which I have no clue how true it is, and I can't even remember the source, but it was basically that BMW bought something like 10,000 microwave ovens, which they haven't destroyed. They just took out the specific chip they needed, which was already in those, put it in the cars, and when the chips come back, they'll put them back in the microwave ovens and sell them, which sounds barking mad, but not totally implausible. If you're desperate and you can't find your chip, so then it was exactly the same chip they needed. It kind of it's hard to know, because that's the thing. I think we're not in the same way that we're not aware that everything we've got is made in China. Is that everything we buy now has a chip in it for some reason? I mean, I can absolutely believe that a microwave oven has a numerous sensor chips. For temperature, for time, for whatever, loads of reasons they would have them. Which cars are festooned with them, and absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's almost gone a little bit too far. There's now things like internet connected fridges, and it's like, I don't need my fridge connected to the internet, really.
No.
It's just too much.
I can't yet see why I need that.
It just needs to keep my food cool. I don't need a screen on it.
But if a Tesla bipedal robot came in with some milk and some cheese because it knew that it wasn't in my fridge because it had been talking to my fridge, do you know, I still don't need that.
No, I still don't need that. Just a little bit too far, I think. It's scary as well.
But anyway, that's enough. That can tell it. So, God, I can't even remember the cars you've seen. The Aura Cat, I remember that one very well.
Oh God,
because there's been so many.
You're going to test my knowledge now.
No, don't worry about it. I mean, is there one that you can? You don't even have to say which one it is, but is there one you've driven that was like seriously rubbish?
Oh, definitely.
All right.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
A lot. I think
not all brilliant. Yeah.
No, definitely not. I think that there's a bit of a boom in the industry here, so some of the companies are just throwing out, let's say, substandard cars, rushing them out to make a quick buck. And I think that they've kind of skimped on a lot of things. I mean, the batteries are fine, the motors are fine, but interior quality is not very good. And, they're kind of built to a price, or they've rushed through, design of the lights, or the interior is a bit wobbly, or there's definitely ones I've driven which I'm like, this is not great. And I think you want, I certainly want more people to drive electric cars, and Chinese electric cars as well. That's why I'm doing this. And I'm just hoping that those first ones which go over to the UK, the US, in Europe, have that really good first impression, rather than saying, I think
they do now. That was certainly something I really noticed, and I mean everything I've seen has been reinforced by that. But I remember, I think it was the Geneva Motor Show in probably 2009, 2010, somewhere around then. There was a BYD stand, and I'd heard of BYD, and because it's such an unusual name for a company, Build Your Dreams. It's just, I'd remembered it, and I went, oh, those are BYDs. I've heard about them. They come from China. And I went to look at these cars, and I know less about cars than most blokes that like football, beer, and whatever, hardwood floors. And, and I don't know anything about build quality, but I could see these looked a bit shonky back then. I went, that doesn't look very good. Doesn't look very safe. It looks kind of bad, and the design was a bit rubbish,
awkward.
And it just looked like if you went over a pothole, a large piece of bodywork might fall off any moment, And now, if you look at Chinese cars now, I wouldn't know, but I could tell that it was as good as anything that was made in Europe, as good as anything made by Audi or BMW or Mercedes. It isn't. They're not like substandard. In a sense, it's the same story that we had with Japanese cars when they first came into Europe and Korean cars. They were kind of a joke. You're too young to remember, but when Honda first did cars here, they were kind of going, well, they're rubbish because they're Japanese.
Yeah.
And you go, well, that's kind of not the case now.
Quite
and
Toyota,
they were just seen as kind of, cheap, rubbish, substandard cars. And that's so, and it wasn't long that they were like that, but automotive journalists would have been very scathing about them. They're not like a proper car that's made in Britain. And when you look if you go around the Gaydon Motor Museum, I always want people who don't know anything about cars to do that, because you will see some of the worst built cars that have ever appeared in human history that were made in this country.
Made in the UK.
In the kind of 70s and 80s. They are appalling. And you can see them there. Brand new, unused versions of Morris Marinas and Ford Corsairs. My dad had a Ford Corsair. It was terrible.
I think my
absolute death trap.
My granddad had an Austin Princess, which wasn't very good either. I remember.
No. Oh, the Princess. Oh, that was hard to love.
Oh yeah, it didn't look very good. I think that transition to like China making just everything. Becoming good at doing it, and now now selling Chinese products back to the world, which aren't branded from another companies. Because like you said, it's happened kind of over 35 years, and it's why China's called the factory of the world. And I can give you a very brief history of, I think, where this really started from. Because
I don't know, it's just appeared, hasn't it? I mean, I keep telling people it didn't start last year or 5 years ago. It's been going on quite a while.
Yeah, and it kind of started in about 1979. So. I think after Mao died, which was I think in 76, they had the big opening up of the economy in 79, and that's when
that was Deng Xiaoping. Wasn't
that's
it?
Right. Yeah, he came in and he said, let's something about common prosperity. Let's make a few people rich, and they bring everyone else up with them. I'm getting these quotes completely wrong, but that's just from memory.
But something along those lines. I do remember that. Yeah.
And it kind of coincided with like Ronald Reagan and Thatcher, who were beginning to move away from kind of manufacturing in the UK and US into much more service-orientated economies.
Yeah.
So they were looking for somewhere to move their manufacturing to.
Right. So do you think then it was a conscious, debated topic in the corridors of power in the US and Europe then? Is that, because I just thought it kind of happened organically, but you think there were actual political decisions made here in the West that led to that?
Almost certainly.
Let's open a fact.
Or it's just I don't think it's just a coincidence that, this all happened at the same time. I think that it was a conscious decision to, here's China, it's opening up. Here's an opportunity for us. We can turn our own economies into a service economy, and shift all that manufacturing and the smell and the waste somewhere else
to China. Yes.
And so and China had kind of four things in 1979, 1980, which was very attractive to kind of overseas companies. So they had cheap workers, they had lots of land underutilized, quite a lot of raw resources, and very lax kind of environmental rules. So as
it's capitalist heaven, basically.
Basically.
That's why it's extraordinary. It's extreme capitalist heaven. That's all we need.
See the dollar signs in people's eyes when they probably heard about this opportunity. And I mean, one stat I found was that a US worker in about 1980 got paid 50 times the amount of a Chinese worker.
Wow.
So the average annual salary, not monthly, in China was about $400 to $500.
Wow.
So these companies relocated for higher profit margins, essentially.
So if you were making televisions in Ruislip, which did happen, there was a television factory there, and you were paying you just go, why aren't we making them in China? We can make them so much cheaper.
Yeah. And we don't have to worry about the wastewater. We don't have to worry about just everything to increase profits. And obviously it was the 80s, which was a bit of a mad time anyway. That was when I was born, but from what I hear and what I've read, it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was a brutal transition for this country. So hundreds of thousands of people just thrown out of work.
Yeah,
where and I mean that's a really important point. It was coal mines. We had lots and lots of coal mines. We burnt. That was I did read that stat not long ago. It's like I think it was 1975. It was about 80% of the power electricity generated in this country was by burning coal. 80%. The rest was nuclear, so that's what we did. And where did that coal come from? Here. We dug it up in this country. We weren't importing it then. And that was definitely the Thatcher regime. And I went on marches and we did benefits for the miners. And I was always had to be so quiet about it. I wouldn't dare mention it. But I always thought, I don't really want I want to help these people because they're being treated so badly and so brutally by the government. But I don't want to help them go back down a mine where they've got to dig up coal, which is a really dangerous job, and they all die young, and it's really horrible. I absolutely understood the communities that were being torn to bits, which they were.
Yeah.
But the job, and I just thought there's got to be, I was enough of a hippie in the background to know that you could generate a tiny amount of electricity with a really rubbish wind turbine that I'd seen in a hippie commune in the 1970s. That I didn't have any language or knowledge or understanding about burning coal to make electricity. I just kind of knew it was naff. We would have called it, like not very good.
Yeah.
So that was a really difficult, but there wasn't just the coal mines that were closed down. It was the manufacturing industry, but it was almost like the feeling I've had, which I've sort of know is wrong, is that one night a load of Chinese people came here and went, oh, let's take those factories back to China. But I don't think that's how it worked.
Not quite. It was slightly different. Kind of powered by greed, really. It's, how can I buy my next Ferrari or my next
private jet or whatever
in the 80s that was important, and so that's kind of where it's all come from. That's where most of the growth, I think, in the economy has come from, is shifting it off seas, having much lower costs and increasing profits. And so China was kind of very strategically located at that time. It was next to some of the bigger Asian kind of powerhouses such as Hong Kong, because that's been kind of around for a while, Singapore and South Korea. So all kind of very strong economies, and kind of they could link into China as well. So a lot of the first companies,
and with very good shipping and communication links as well. I mean, that's a very important part of it, isn't it?
Exactly. And a lot of the first businesses in China were actually opened up by people from Hong Kong, because they were the first to see the opportunity to invest, and then they hooked the other countries into China.
Right.
And then, they had special economic zones set up. So Shenzhen is a really good example of Deng Xiaoping saying, right, we're going to have some more favorable economic policies, get companies to set up their factories here, and kind of really spur on the economy. And so it grew from a small town to what it is now, a mega city with millions of people.
Because that is it's a thing. I'm trying to find it again, and I know we've got it somewhere. So this is relevant. I'll do it as quickly as I can. But Judy, my wife, I think I may have told you, was in a circus company. Yeah. When I met her, she was in Circus Oz, and they trained with the Nanjing acrobats in Nanjing in 1983, 84, somewhere around there, early 80s. And there's a photograph I've seen of Judy on the dockside at Shenzhen. When they caught a boat from Hong Kong to get on a coach that took them to Nanjing.
They took a coach from Shenzhen to Nanjing.
Yeah, how long would that? I mean, I remember it was a horrendous journey. Yes, it was days. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know the whole story. One day I'll get her to recount it. At the moment, she goes, Why do you have to talk about when I was in the circus, you doofus? But but anyway, that photograph is amazing because now I know what Shenzhen looks like now. I mean, it's not like she's in a village. It's but it's a really small town, low buildings in the background, a few people not dotted about, very clearly very quiet. There's not much there. And that is 84, I don't know how many years that is ago. Some lots, but staggering change in that in a half a lifetime.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, repeated all over China, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so many cities with millions of people that most of us have never really heard of. It's just, it boggles the mind. And, so obviously China's economy has benefited from this as well because, they've been able to grow and expand and give people a much better quality of life. So, I mean, that's been a huge benefit, but at the expense of the environment and still a lot of manufacturing takes place here. I mean, I think the other thing is that when the companies first came to China, so for example, let's say VW, for example, they set up their first factory in China in 1984. They were quite early into the market. They were one of the first to produce or mass produce cars here. And so I think they sent over kind of these kits that were built in the factory here before they actually built their own cars. And when VW came over, so all of the supporting businesses came over as well. So the whole supply chain shifted to China. So that's why everything is now in China. So it just takes one or two bigger businesses to see the benefits of opening here, and then the whole supply chain moves because they see the benefits as well. And that's basically in a nutshell what's happened. And now we're in a situation where 50% of the world's major industrial goods, steel and things like that, are now produced in China. 60% of the world's cement, for example.
Wow. Which is phenomenal. Will be, in terms of amounts, mind-boggling, vast.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And it's basically what happened in the UK with the Industrial Revolution, which happened over quite relatively long period of time. But it happened in China over only 35 years. And I think that's just what is mind blowing, and that's why China makes so much of the stuff we buy today.
Yes. Yeah, no, it is an extraordinary shift that I think that's why I was so keen to get you to do stuff for Fully Charged, because I thought this is a really, the more I read and heard about it, the more I knew this is what, I was late to the game. And I still think people are the vast majority of people are kind of unaware of that huge shift. I think people are becoming more aware of it now because of it, international tensions and Taiwan and the difficulties with things like that, that it's becoming slightly more in the news. But I think I feel that a lot of the comments that we receive I just want to point out the vast majority of the comments we receive on all your videos are really positive.
Great.
But there are occasionally negative ones, which are always very politically based, but they are based on a kind of total ignorance of the last 40 years of history. It's like yesterday, China started making electric cars. Well, no. Some of them learned how to make electric cars from working at VW in 1984. There will be people who worked at Volkswagen in China in 1984 who have now
the CEO
the CEO of whatever. Yeah. And that's where that's come from.
Exactly.
And also that thing about the copying thing, I think is fascinating. That someone can go, well, like I remember when you drove, was that a Xiaopeng? Is it the P7 that does look a bit like a Tesla Model 3? But then a Tesla Model 3 looks a bit like, you could list 50 other cars that it's got bits that are a bit like it.
Of course.
It's
very easy to point, that Toyota looks a bit like this car, and that, everyone, everyone influences everyone else. It's not copying really. And I think, most of the designs of the cars here are very original now, whether they're to everyone's taste is up for discussion, but they are pretty original.
I love a little boxy, funny car with a funny face and two big round eyes.
Me too.
That's very easy to park.
Exactly. Doesn't take up much space.
But then, so the other one I did want you to mention was the battery swap stuff, because that's another one. It's so interesting. As I've been now saying for the last year and a half, it's not a technological. There's no technological problem with electric cars. It's just psychological. It's people's attitudes. They work. They're boring. They're just, they'll soon be so boring and mundane you won't even think about it. But at the moment, there's this terror. But then people come up with what they think are solutions. Why on earth don't people just swap the batteries? It would be so easy, like that no one else has thought about it or ever considered it. I mean, there's lots of examples of that, but you've got some amazing stats about battery swapping, and because it does seem to be working.
Oh, yes.
In that one company with NIO, doesn't it?
That's right. And there was they sent out a press release the other day that they've just opened their 700th NIO swapping battery swapping station.
700. Oh my god!
And just 2 weeks ago, it was at 650. They've opened 50 in 2 weeks. They really
50 battery swap. So when you think of like we're installing chargers, is quite easy. But installing a battery swapping thing, which is a complex machinery with loads of batteries, with charging infrastructure to support it, and a building.
Yep,
that's terrifying.
It is, God. And it really is proving that it does work in China. And they've just actually they're just about to open their first one in Norway, their battery swapping station.
Wow.
So,
and this is it specifically still for one model of NIO, or is it? Are there more than one
model of NIO you can back?
Any of their cars.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that, because I remember when you did the episode about it.
Yeah.
You were in a fairly big SUV when you were doing that.
Yes, that's right. It was the ES8, their biggest one.
Yeah.
But you can, their new car, the ET7, the saloon, which is coming out, I think, next year, that'll be able to swap. And you can choose your flavor of battery. You can go for I'm going to get these all wrong, but like a 55 kilowatt hour or a 70 kilowatt hour or 100 kilowatt hour or 150 kilowatt.
Wow.
You can choose which one you want. It's a very, very kind of smart model. So,
so presumably when you're buying those cars, then are you not buying the battery? You're presumably leasing the battery, which
so you have the option. You could buy the battery, or you can lease the battery. If you lease the battery, the car's around about £7,000 less, and you pay Gosh, how much? I think it's £100 a month, more or less, to rent the battery. So there's a lot of different options, depending on your budget or what you like, and I think that gives a lot of flexibility. So if you are driving in the city most of the time, you can just have the small battery, so the 55 kilowatt hour. Or if you're driving a long distance, you rent the 150 kilowatt hour for 2 weeks, and then you can.
Oh, I see. Oh God. Okay, I'm just catching up now. So you could say buy the car with the smallest and therefore cheapest battery option.
Yep.
But then when you're doing your holiday, you swap that out for the biggest.
Yeah, I think that's an option. So you can.
I wanted to use a rude word to say the biggest, but I'm trying to keep this family friendly. But a very big battery. Yes. And that battery, presumably, it's got to be. The difference between a 55 kilowatt hour and 150 kilowatt hour has got to be a physical size difference. But so there's a gap. I'm assuming in the car. I mean, this is probably too much.
Actually, I'm not.
Yeah. I mean. I know that, say, maybe like a 70 kilowatt hour to 100, probably the same size, might be heavier. But from, say, 55 to 100, it's got to be bigger. Physically bigger.
I think maybe within the actual pack itself, it takes up a bit more space.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It'll be the same pack, but with less batteries in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm being really thick.
And I think they've developed a new battery chemistry, which is denser. And, as they develop, they'll probably get to 200 and 250 kilowatt hours. I mean, ridiculous numbers.
Crazy,
I don't know who needs that range, but
no.
I certainly can't last more than about an hour and a half without having to stop.
So. No. I was very proud when I drove up to Glasgow to COP26. I did 168 miles without stopping.
Wow.
But the thing is, in the UK, 168 miles takes a really long time because the average speed is under 50, over the whole time. That was on motorways, but I did that. And then I realized, I don't need to charge the car. I just need to discharge me.
Must have been feeling a bit uncomfortable by the end of that journey.
I was in quite a lot of pain for the last 20 miles, but it's the longest because I've now I keep a sort of vague note of my bladder range, and I was very proud of that.
It's worth also mentioning Geely, who've also developed battery swapping.
Wow.
And they've developed one which they can do the swap in 59 seconds.
Oh my God. So that is, if that was a thing,
quicker than filling up.
There's no way you could fill a petrol tank in 59 seconds.
Chance.
I mean, that is.
And so I think they've rolled it out to a few taxi fleets near to Shanghai. So they're, it's out there in the wild. It's being used.
Yeah.
So it's really, really just amazing. And there's one other one actually as well, which is worth mentioning in Taiwan. They've got a lot of electric bikes there, much like in China, and they've got a battery swapping system for electric bikes. The company's called GoGoRo.
GoGoRo. I've heard about GoGoRo. Yeah,
and they've got these fantastic kind of hubs where you can see about 20 different power packs. You just literally go up, swipe your phone, take out the pack, put it in your bike, and off you go again. You've got another 50 kilometers of range.
Wow.
So who knows?
That makes a huge amount of sense. For bikes, it really does make a huge amount of sense, doesn't it? Because then you could also lock that up on the street and take the battery out. And you don't need to worry about no one's going to nick your battery because couriers could use it, or it's got such a huge kind of potential use. I mean, certainly for taxis, it just is so obvious. If you can and I mean, the weird thing is, it's not new because that was being done in New York City, in Manhattan in 1908.
Really?
There were battery swap. Yeah, there was over 800 electric taxis in Manhattan, and 2 battery swapping stations, one in Soho and one in Harlem.
Oh, what happened?
So in the north and south of the city. And literally, the taxi would drive in, 2 operatives would push a wooden box of lead acid batteries out from underneath the taxi on a special trolley, and they'd slide another one in, and that was like a couple of minutes to swap batteries. And those taxis had 60 to 70 miles range in 1908.
Oh dear, we've not come very far, have we?
No, we haven't. We're going backwards.
Oh dear.
We've reached the big fizz, and we're now going back towards the big bang. It's backwards. We did an episode of Red Dwarf about it many years ago. That is crazy though. And because I remember you sending me, it was a while ago. I think you sent me a press release where NIO had done their millionth battery swap.
And
that wasn't recent. That was maybe over a year ago. I can't remember. It was quite a while ago. And
that's
which sort of gives the impression that it's quite a popular system. People are using it.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, if you buy a NIO from new, it comes as part of the package. So, you've got no reason not to really. And it means you're not precious about your battery. It's not your battery.
Yes. That's when it makes sense. But it's just it's the infrastructure required to make that possible, isn't it? That's what's
and
that would stymie it in Europe and North America, and it doesn't make any difference in China.
No.
We need 50 more. Okay, there they are. They're done. Oh my God,
in 2 weeks.
Oh God, no, it is extraordinary. Yeah. I mean, it's such a privilege for us, Elliot, to have you making these shows and do. I mean, it's a real joy, and I don't want to, as the Americans might say, blow smoke up your ass. But I just want to say that the way that when I first talked to you, which I don't know how long ago that is, I loved what you were doing, but it was, you were definitely sort of, I don't know how to put it, slightly nervous in front of a camera. And you have become so brilliant at presenting it and at explaining how things work. And, it's really been an absolute joy to watch those changes. And it's such a privilege for us to have that facility. And I don't want to blow smoke up our own arse, but I'm going to, in that there's no other channel on YouTube or the television that has an embedded China correspondent. So it's amazing. I mean, I'm so thrilled that you're doing it, and it is so brilliant, and you're so good at it. That's enough. I'm not going to say
that's a good amount of smoke. Thank you.
Yeah, I hate you. You're young, you're slim, you've got a beautiful son, lovely wife, and you live. Well,
Well, I've absolutely loved doing it, and I hope that
it's fantastic.
I can show a good view into what China is kind of really like on the ground.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to the next.
More. So thank you.
Brilliant stuff. All right, we'll speak soon.
Thank you.
Take care. Well, that's all. Thank you so much for listening to this. Please do tell all your mates about the Fully Charged Plus podcast. It's easy to find on all your podcast downloading apps or on YouTube. And that really helps us. And obviously do subscribe to the podcast and leave a nice review if you want to. That's always lovely. And that's all. As always, if you have been, thank you for listening.